I'm Marine. I'm working more specifically on the construction sector. But the construction sector by itself doesn't represent a lot of emissions. To give you an example, in France, it's only 4% of the emissions of the industry. Yet, if you take into account that the construction is also the sector that's responsible for the buildings of tomorrow, and you take the emissions of both the buildings and the construction sector, it represents more than 40% of the global emissions. The first advantage for a company to undertake a carbon assessment is definitely to be in line with regulation. For instance, in France, it's now mandatory to perform a life cycle assessment on every new building since the beginning of 2022. The second advantage for companies is definitely to get a cutting edge over their competitors. The third reason would definitely be to get some savings, because when doing a carbon assessment, you often identify spots where you might gain in efficiency and undertake an optimization of your transportation, for instance. At Greenly, we work using two pillars. The first pillar is the monetary approach, in which we use the accounting of a company in order to deduce which sectors are going to be the most important for the carbon emissions. And then we complete this approach by the physical approach, in which we use material flows in order to deduce more specifically the emissions of the most important sectors. The first reason to work with Greenly would definitely be efficiency, since the double approach we decided on really helps us gain time when establishing the most important emission sectors for a company. The second reason to work with Greenly is that we establish long-term client relationships, so we follow your emissions year over year and we help you establish reduction actions in order to actively reduce your GHG emissions. The third reason to work with Greenly is that we can have two approaches. The first one would be an LCA approach, so a life cycle assessment, in which we take a physical entity like a building or a product and we compute all its emissions from its cradle to its grave. And the second approach would be to perform carbon assessment, in which we compute all the emissions linked to the activity of a company. These two approaches really help you have a complete overview of your carbon footprint.